Horror films play on the inner subconscious and exploit your personal fears to get a cheap scare from you. There are many genres of horror films, such as psychological, thrasher, thrillers, and much more. However, a movie doesn't have to be a work of fiction for it to be scary. The world is a crazy place, and sometimes a simple documentary about things that go on in the world can send shivers down your spine. From famous cult leaders to conspiracy theories, there's a never-ending supply of interesting and spooky documentaries out there that will surely keep you up at night. Here are 5 terrifying documentaries you should never watch alone. Number 5. The Manson Family is a movie that follows the heinous acts committed by Charles Manson and his band of followers throughout the late 60s and early 70s. Charles Manson was a cult leader who had a following who committed heinous acts in his name and under his ruling. The life of Manson is an incredibly interesting one. His life was that of a psychopathic charmer who took needy innocent people under his wing and transformed them into something much worse with time. Charles Manson for years snuck his way of thinking under the radar and even at one point befriended the Beach Boys. Babies were even had in the Manson cult that Charles Manson named himself. Charles Manson did everything from scam people out of drug money before shooting them to getting his cult to commit strings of slayings within a few days of each other. Manson believed he was Jesus Christ in many ways and referred to himself as such, and in his cult was actually seen as some sort of prophet or god. In the late 1960s, Manson's cult was finally arrested, and what took place for years and years to come were a plethora of trials, interviews, parole hearings, and to this day drama surrounding Manson's name. Crazier yet, a few years ago, a 29-year-old woman who refers to herself as Star got into a public relationship with Charles Manson from behind bars. The worst part is that she'd been corresponding with him since she was 17 years old through regular mail. Overall, the documentary titled The Manson Family is a perfect film to watch to get a clear picture of what occurred during Charles Manson's life. It's an unforgettable tale to say the least. Number 4. Cropsey is a disturbing true story that takes place in Staten Island, New York. To describe it best, Cropsey was an escaped mental patient who lived in an old abandoned Willowbrook mental institution, who would come out late at night and snatch children off the streets. Sometimes Cropsey had a hook for a hand, other times he wielded a bloody axe. It sounds extremely silly, however it's unfortunately based on truth. The kids who told this tale to each other assumed it just being a tale being told to spook them from exploring abandoned houses as they would do frequently. But the scary truth is that Cropsey was actually a child predator who kidnapped 5 children during his reign of terror who haven't been seen to this day. Cropsey is a highly rated documentary that's recommended even by the likes of Roger Ebert. Though sadly, even though it's highly rated, it only gathered about $44,000 at the box office during its initial release. But it's safe to say that the quality of a film shouldn't be determined by its superficial success. Number 3. Ghost hunting shows have become a bit of a joke as of late. In them, the people hunting the supposed ghosts usually are faking everything along the way, including their reactions to boost potential viewership so that people are interested more in their show. However, Demon House decides to take the concept of fake ghost hunting and crush it with the might of 9 suns. Demon House is one of the most compelling paranormal ghost hunting events of all time, chock-filled with video evidence, advanced EVP, and much more. In it, the director of the film purchases one of the most haunted houses in America that has undisputable evidence of paranormal activity, and brings his film crew along to all sorts of crazy haunted events that occurred along the way. The movie sets a new precedent for ghost hunting television and really puts the more obviously fake shows in their place, leaving behind quite the act to live up to. Demon House was relatively well liked, but some critics weren't too impressed with it. Even though it's a very well put together piece of film that attempts to showcase real life paranormal activity, it struggles in its storytelling ability, resulting in some viewers being hypercritical of its success. However, if you enjoy the idea of ghosts or are a ghost hunter yourself, it also doubles as a horror film, because even though it's all allegedly true events that are taking place, it can be quite jarring at times and very difficult to witness. The film was just released in 2018 and is currently available on Amazon, YouTube, and Vudu. Number 2. Slender Man these days is a story that's far too often overused and overtold. The story has been beaten to death, reshaped, and then beaten again countless times. Though the documentary Beware the Slender Man isn't actually about Slender Man, but rather the effect the fictional character had on a pair of 2 girls who lured their best friend into the woods before they started attacking her and committing attempted murder. Luckily, the victim survived and is living happy with her family, albeit with serious mental trauma and PTSD due to the attack. The film follows the two girls in their descent to madness and recreates the attack that happened on their victim. This whole story truly showcases the amount of toxicity certain parts of the internet culture can harbor. It also showcases what can happen when easily manipulatable people, specifically children, find out about things that they really shouldn't. To this day, the siblings responsible for this heinous act of violence are serving 40 years in an asylum, and even when they're released, they'll be under intense supervision for the rest of their lives, which is certainly a suitable punishment for their crime. The film is a really well put together and interesting piece of work, and will really leave a mark on you after you watch it. Some people question the morality of sentencing two young girls to such a harsh punishment. However, considering that they've caused so much pain so early on in their life, it makes sense that they won't be allowed to roam the general public by themselves ever again. Number 1. This movie isn't particularly scary. However, it's based on a scary movie, and actually, considering the obsessive nature of this documentary, that in itself makes it rather horrifying. The movie focuses on the deeper hidden meanings behind Stanley Kubrick's classic The Shining, a film that sparked massive critical praise for its time. This documentary specifically follows a hotel room heavily featured in The Shining that contains mass amounts of symbolism and deeper meanings. The director of the film overall says it best, saying, "My personal take on this is, for one, I don't think it's nearly as visionary as any one of these folk have found. I just see it as sort of a story about juggling the responsibilities of your career and family as a cautionary tale of what may happen if you make the wrong choice. And even maybe looking at the ghosts of these figures that represent fortune or prestige, or things that you might be chasing at the expense of paying proper attention to your family." That sounds like an oxymoron at first. However, The Shining uses symbolism and deeper meaning to convey its lack of a deeper meaning. It's truly a genius work of art. The Shining is such a powerful, long-spanning movie that many people have made their own independent films discussing the nature of the film and its various supposed deeper meanings. One such film student pointed out that The Shining apparently was filmed so symmetrically that when watching it backwards and forwards, it's still a coherent and good film. Symmetrically, you can overlay the standard and reversed versions of the movies, and they both line up perfectly and still play a coherent story. Overall, this film is highly acclaimed and is a must-see for anyone who's a fan of Stanley Kubrick's work. Want to expand your mind on the thought process during the filming of The Shining. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, be sure to click that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep updated with our videos.